Perfect. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Boom. Chris, thanks so much for joining us on the Meat Mafia podcast. Excited to have you here.
Oh, my pleasure. I'm really looking forward to talking to both of you.
Yeah, Clemenza and I are both excited for this because when we got on Twitter in the middle of January, you were one of the initial people that we followed in the low carb Twitter space. So it's been awesome just to forge some of these digital relationships and turn them into real conversations. So just can't thank you enough for coming on.
No, my pleasure. I really am intrigued by what you both are doing, and I'm really looking forward to speaking with you guys.
Yeah, we know that Clemenza was just talking about this, that you've had your own incredible low carb journey and story through nutrition. So I think that's probably the perfect starting point. I think you had mentioned right before this that you had gotten up to 278 at one point. Would love to just learn a little bit more about your own personal low carb and nutrition journey and dive in.
Yeah, well, feel free to ask any questions along the way. I was struggling with trying to get down to an optimal weight for most of my life. I'm 57 years old now, but by the time I reached the age of 50, or 50, a little over 50, I had gotten myself up to 278 pounds. And I still remember the day that I learned that I weighed that much, because I didn't have a scale in my house. And I was visiting my mom, and I went into her bathroom and saw the scale laying there, and I decided to step on it, and I was in for a rude awakening when I saw 278 pounds, the number on the scale looking up at me, and it was quite a bit more than I realized I had allowed myself to slip. Mm-hmm. And that was back in 2015. And I've tried different ways to get into shape and lose weight over the years, over the decades. And, I've had some short-term success, losing 30 pounds, probably several times. And once I even lost about 50 pounds. I guess I hadn't been as high as 278 at that point. So when I lost 50 pounds, I got myself down to somewhere around 205, which is what I think of as my goal weight. Mm-hmm. And it took me a lot of calorie restriction and, white knuckle willpower to get my weight down that low. That was, I was in my mid 40s, I guess. And I remember the thing that I remember the most is I ordered a couple of pairs of pants in size 34 waist, which was probably 6 inches smaller than the 40-inch pants that were the biggest I ever wore. And those 34 pants came in the mail, and I probably got to wear them for about a week before I could no longer hold on to the calorie restriction and started my weight gain again. So that's just a little illustration of kind of what I went through. And I had a lot of ups and downs, losing 10 pounds, 15 pounds, and then gaining it all back and gaining more of it back. And it was just always a struggle. I've done a lot of running in my life, and I would run to try to lose the weight. And, you can do it for some period of time just by willpower. But when you try to just sustain that, it becomes a lot, and it was always short-lived. So, I kind of, I struggled with it, and I got up to 278 pounds, and I guess it was in the beginning of 2018 is when I reached out to a friend on Twitter. And I wasn't really using Twitter that much at the time, but this guy who lived near me, who I'd met, but I knew that he knew some things about weight loss, and I reached out to him, and I asked him for a book that he would recommend for me to help lose weight. And he suggested via Twitter direct message that I give Why We Get Fat by Gary Taubes as a good book to read. And that was on January 10th, 2018. And it was a couple days later in the waiting area of a Mexican restaurant on the night of my daughter's 16th birthday, that I was reading this book, waiting for a table, and I came across some things in that book during those few minutes that sort of resonated with me. And it was about 15 minutes later, I'm sitting down at the table to order what would have been a normal Mexican meal, and I decided to give this low carb thing a try, and I never really looked back. So I skipped the tortilla, and I skipped the beans, and I skipped the all the stuff with carbs in it, and I ate my first low carb meal. And I think, like unlike a lot of people, I kind of figured it out at that point, and it just worked for me. So I ended up losing weight from that point on at about a 5 pound or 6 pounds per month clip, until I got down to my goal weight. And I never really looked back. I've had a few little tiny lapses, but low carb has worked for me, and I'm a pretty big proponent.
Chris, I find it really interesting that you remember that moment, and you probably remember the exact moment where you said no to the tortilla chips, like the willpower it took to say no and make that yes decision, that you were going to go down because I think I've come across a similar moment where it's like, okay, you really need to like have the conviction this time, where, you've kind of gone back and forth, and that moment is like that breaking point. Curious to if that's how you actually felt.
Well, it's interesting because a lot of things in life, I've had that moment of clarity before at times, and I thought I had it with weight loss. So everything seemed clear from what I was reading, and I thought that I had it figured out, but I also still had this little bit of just from my past experiences, I was like waiting for the shoe to drop. I was like, this makes sense to me. I'm going to do this. And so, but then I would keep sort of looking over my shoulder, is this really going to be sustainable? But the shoe never dropped. It was like, I lost 5 pounds that first month, and I was doing, essentially what I had read about. And I was, at that point, I really started reaching out and trying to research as much as I could, meeting other people through Twitter. I found very quickly that there was this community of people that were, that had already experienced the success that I was hoping to experience. And a lot of these people were very generous and willing to share. I met some of these low carb doctors, and so I was doing research while I was losing the weight. I never lost more than 6 pounds in a month, but I also never lost less than 5 on my way to and it was weird because in the past, I've always focused on trying to see how fast I could lose the weight. And after like 3 or 4 weeks, for some reason, I had this feeling of calm, like this is right. I'm not feeling the incredible hunger that I used to feel. And all of a sudden the urgency went away. Like in the past, I would want to get to my goal weight quicker without really realizing why. It was because I think subconsciously I knew that I couldn't sustain it. So like I'd have to arrive at that destination somehow. And once I figured out this low carb thing, it was like, this is easy. My cravings are gone. I know how to do this, and it's just a matter of time. Like, so who cares if I lose 4 pounds a month? It'll take me an extra month, or 2 months. But once you realize that you are in control, which is the way I feel on this low carb diet, and I can elaborate on some of what I've learned in the diet. I know everybody has slightly different experiences, but for me, learning how to achieve satiety, learning how to eliminate the cravings, was the magic that everybody talks about. It's like, if once you're not at the mercy of white knuckle willpower, And you can actually just live your life and enjoy things, including your food, and not have to count calories and always be restricting. I don't, I argue with people a lot on Twitter who preach the calories in, calories out, white knuckle willpower way of losing weight. Personally, I don't care what other people do to lose weight, and I don't tell anyone else they're wrong. But when they tell me that I have to count calories or restrict calories in order to achieve a healthy weight, that's wrong, because that's not how I've done it. I don't count calories, and this is like the most sustainable thing. I'm 57 years old, and I may not have had as many challenges with respect to obesity as a lot of people, but I got up to 278. I'm 6'3". I'm a fairly big guy. So, my experience are different from other people, but being overweight has been something that's bothered me for a long time. And now I feel like I've got it figured out, and that it's going to be a lifetime of being at a healthy weight. And I like being involved in this community and sharing my experiences with other people who are now struggling with what I struggled with.
Yeah, that's it. That's an incredible story. And it's so interesting for you too. I feel like the word sustainable is the word that keeps coming to mind, how you were like on the dot 5 to 6 pounds every single month. Was that part of the issue with some of the older diets? Because I know you said you had lost, different clips of like 10, 20, 30, even 50 pounds. Was it just a lack of sustainability in the calories in, calories out approach in the past?
Yeah, well, I have a certain degree of willpower. I am able to do certain things that require willpower. And you know what? I think a lot of people can do this. You motivate yourself and you really focus on restricting those calories. You can sort of disrupt the equilibrium for a certain amount of time. But I kind of equate it to, like picture pushing a car up an incline. Mm-hmm. And suppose the incline is very gradual, but it's a heavy car. A strong guy could push the car up a slight incline for a certain amount of distance. And at some point, say that incline turns into a steeper hill, you could still hold the car with enough exertion, but eventually the resistance and the force against you is going to overwhelm you. Mm-hmm. And it's hard, you just can't sustain it. Whereas the way of eating that I've adopted, and it's a whole community of people that have gone with some version of the low carb diet. I know everybody's on a different point on that spectrum. Mm-hmm. You're not constantly exerting some sort of certainly not white knuckle willpower, but I don't even think it requires willpower anymore. I think my life now requires discipline. Discipline is different than white knuckle willpower. You know that people will put a cake in front of you and it looks good and it probably tastes good, and I could succumb to that that simple superficial pleasure and ruin my diet. But it doesn't take white knuckle willpower for me to just opt to have a steak or a chicken or a salmon and some salad and some vegetables and whatever else. I can eat a lot of good foods. I just now choose not to eat the foods that undermine my health and make me gain weight. So it's a sustainable, enjoyable way of living. And it's something that I predict I will be able to keep with for the rest of my life.
Mm. And that's the interesting thing too, Chris, about the low carb approach, because Clemenza and I, when we talk to people that have never done a low carb diet before, that's one of the first things they'll say is, oh, how do you live without like the breads or the pastas or their cake? And we try and say, like, you don't understand. This diet is so satiating, like being able to actually eat steak or chicken thighs or this like incredible animal protein, just even though you don't necessarily have some of the gluten or the carbs, you just feel so full afterwards. It's not like this deficit diet that you're talking about where you're just always hungry, you're always white knuckling, and you're more likely to succumb to the cake. because I know if I ever crave pizza, I'm like, let me just eat some steak and eggs. I'll feel great after 20, 30 minutes. And then that craving just completely goes away. Whereas if you're trying to do this deficit approach, maybe you're eating like a salad or something like that, but you're still hungry. So you're probably more likely to give into the cake. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely, 100%. It's I've learned a lot of things personally, and again, I'm very cognizant that different people have varying experiences, but for me, it's not just about what you don't eat. It's about what you eat, and you just referenced that with respect to the satiating things. You've got to learn which foods provide you with the most satiety, and factor in enjoyment as well. I mean, like some foods, like for me, sardines could make me satiated, but I don't particularly enjoy them.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes I will, for varying reasons, I'll have a couple tins of sardines, just to, it makes me not want to eat anything. If I'm like craving something, it doesn't happen that often. I don't eat that many sardines, but it fills me up and makes me not want to eat anything because I don't really love them that much. So it's almost a bit of a punishment of sorts. I'd much rather just, normally I'm just eating things that I really like that would be burgers and steak and chicken and salmon and things like that. Just keep me happy. And I eat vegetables, green vegetables, broccoli, asparagus, Brussels sprouts, things like that. And honestly, I enjoy my food now at a much deeper level than I ever did when I was on on a traditional standard American diet. It's a very superficial enjoyment that you get out of eating these processed empty foods. And you go through Sam's Club or Costco or one of the warehouse stores, and you see that pallet after pallet of these foods, and the proportions of these foods that are basically like 2% protein, and the rest, the other 98% is refined carbs and seed oils. It's terrible. And then you have people telling you that you should be eating those foods in moderation. Like I don't see the point. If I get hungrier when I eat a little bit of those foods than I do when I skip them entirely. So it's just, there's an intelligent way of eating, and I don't know what we've done to ourselves with these warehouses full of horrible, refined, processed foods. And it's fine if somebody wants to eat, if somebody can eat them in moderation, like truly can have 2 Oreos and then eat the other 98% of their diet healthy. If that's part of your deal, that's fine with me, but it's never going to be something that's going to work for me.
It's almost painful to call Oreos food. Like I want to be a part of the movement that just completely moves away from the thinking that sort of thing should be consumed. I get the, wanting, I think having treats is fine, but wholesome treats is the best kind of treat, right? Like have some whole milk ice cream with some honey in it. Slotso and I were sharing a recipe the other day that he had that sounded incredible. I just think that we've kind of tricked our taste buds in some regard. I wonder if you resonate with that at all, where we've kind of fooled ourselves into this way of eating because our taste buds are saying, oh, this is nutritious because of all these flavorings. And then you back out of it when you kind of have the success of that you're speaking to. And you say, well, I was kind of eating based on taste, but also not getting healthier. I'm wondering if that resonates with you at all.
So much. It's incredible how adaptable our taste buds are. It's a conversation that I have with people all the time about, like what percent of dark chocolate is the right percentage for a given person. And it's kind of funny. People like sort of make it their little badge of honor. You know, like one person says, I eat 78% chocolate, dark chocolate. And someone else goes, oh, that's too sweet for me. I go 85. And then someone else goes, well, I just eat 100%. But your taste buds definitely do adapt. There's no question about it. And for me, like plain Greek yogurt and some mixed berries is a completely viable, enjoyable, satisfying dessert. And the thought of eating, something that's 90% sugar, like a cake, and I don't know, I don't really spend too much time worrying about what other people do, but it is a shame that people just give into that really superficial pleasure that ends up having such horrible consequences on our weight, on our metabolic health. And the more that you eat, the more that your body that your taste buds can tolerate that as being something that's desirable. It just doesn't take that long to adapt. I've got the taste thing. I mean, I wish people could understand, people that are eating the standard American diet with all the processed carbs and the refined sugar. I wish they could understand how much I enjoy the meals that I eat. I mean, the mixed berries aren't really mixed with plain Greek yogurt. It's not a very sweet meal in comparison to traditional desserts, but once your taste buds have adapted to that way of eating, it's every bit as enjoyable as the desserts that I used to eat. It's more desirable. Like I said, it's the sugars that we eat and the refined carbs. It's a very superficial experience. And I've heard you, Salazzo, talk about your own experiences, and what I've experienced in the past was nowhere near what you've articulated. However, coming back from a meal at a restaurant, eating like all these seed oils and refined carbs, and being like doubled over in the driver's seat, trying to get home to the bathroom before in time, it's not an enjoyable way to live. And now I've been eating this way, this healthy way of eating for 4 years, and I mean, that never happens to me, never. And it used to happen to me routinely. Like that alone is worth the price of admission to this way of eating. Being able to go out to eat and take the scenic way home and not worry about how many minutes it is to get to a bathroom.
It's such a good point, and it's a great question is, what is the price of that actually worth? Not having a chronically inflamed gut, having amazing, consistent energy, being proud of the person that's in the mirror. I mean, for someone like you, right? What weight do you walk around at now, Chris?
Well, right now I'm just a touch over 200. I probably reside in between 200 and 205. And just to put that in perspective, I'm at 57. I'm also now as strong physically as I've ever been in my life.
We've seen the videos.
You're jacked, yeah.
It's impressive. Jacked.
Well, I've been working out, but I was working out when I was overweight as well. And it's so the 205 pounds is about as much as I go these days. And that's with a decent amount of muscle. So it's, that's where I'm at.
Yeah. So, I mean, before that, right, you're 278. So basically that's the equivalent of you walking around with a 70-pound kettlebell all day long. So so my whole point is just saying, like, what is the price of everything you have now worth? Because we all have our own respective stories in this low carb journey. And it's like no bread or pasta or Oreo is ever worth the benefits that I think the three of us have gotten from this diet. And I think a lot of other people would agree. The issue is that most don't know how good it feels to rewire your gut and your palate through this approach. So you don't necessarily have the basis for understanding. And that's what we're trying to figure out here through the Meat Mafia.
You're asking me what it's worth to be?
Yeah, what is that worth? Because for me, it's priceless. So I would assume you would say something probably pretty similar.
Yeah, it's worth a lot. I mean, putting an actual dollar amount, it would be difficult, but yeah, like if you had told me, I think there's a problem that a lot of people don't believe that it exists. The solution exists I didn't believe it, like when I was, once, you try the calorie restriction over and over and over, and you lose the weight and you gain it back. And, you order new clothes and then you can't fit into them anymore. You get to a point where you think it's not something that you're ever going to master. And so then if somebody asks you, what would it be worth? You don't even take it seriously. Yeah, I mean, if somebody had said, I don't know, it's worth a lot, put it that way. I mean, like it's life-changing. It changes the way you feel about yourself. It changes I just went on my daughter was home from spring break from college last week, and we went on a hike up a mountain. And I don't know if I physically could have gotten up the mountain at 278 pounds, but it certainly would have been a major colossal chore. It was a pretty steep climb. And, now I can enjoy the day with my wife and my daughter, and not have to think about lugging an extra 70 or 80 pounds up the side of a mountain. So, that one experience, a couple hours on one day last week alone is worth a heck of a lot, but just multiply that by every single day, every single time I've got to climb a flight of stairs, every time I get to go running with my wife, which I really enjoy. I mean, you can't really enjoy a run when you weigh close to 280 pounds. And it affects everything that you do. It affects the way you carry yourself, the way you feel in your clothes, the way people look at you. It's yeah, priceless might be the right way to describe it.
I'm wondering, just to kind of piggyback on that question, when you first made the change, or when you had been going through the iterations to get to the point in 2018 where you really felt like this was going to be sustainable, what sort of views were cast upon you by the people who you surround yourself with? Like, friends, were they supportive? Because, from personal experience, you kind of always get viewed as like a guinea pig from people who are surrounded by you. When you start changing stuff, they're like, oh, why aren't you eating cake? Like, why aren't you eating X, Y, and Z? And it's one of those things where it is obviously something that you wish that everyone would just be like kind of understanding of it, but it's not always the case. So I'm curious, what was your support system looking like, and sort of what was the feedback when you started seeing results, which is obviously the best sort of token of currency when you're making changes. It's like, hey, look, I just dropped 10 pounds in 2 months and I'm feeling great. Like, that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. So I'm curious about that.
I've had excellent support. My wife has been incredibly supportive, and my kids have given me nothing but positivity, all the way around. And I know from talking to other people that is very important. I know a lot of people have some people receive no support, but worse than no support, some people actually are sabotaged in their efforts. And I think you can get through it if if everybody around you is ambivalent and they don't pay any attention either way. That's fine. You can just take it on yourself. For me, I got positivity and I was met with nothing but enthusiasm for what I was doing. So I don't take that for granted. But some people really are sabotaged in their efforts, and that's really unfortunate, because I think some people encounter jealousy or envy, or somehow your success is going to take away from me somehow. So anytime I can encourage other people to it's hard. I mean, usually the people that are sabotaging, it's hard to reach them, and I don't understand what their motivation is exactly, but I do recognize how important it is. And you know, after I reached my goal weight in the mid 2018, I was diagnosed with cancer, and I went through radiation and chemotherapy. And I got the same level of support from my wife and my kids through that struggle as well. And I also got a lot of support from people on Twitter. People, I'd already met people through the weight loss, and I got a lot of support. So I can just speak to the importance of, receiving support and having people on your side when you're trying to lose weight or when you're dealing with something else like cancer. It's important as you try to, accomplish what you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, I think choosing who you listen to externally helps you listen to that voice internally that's telling you, keep going, versus, oh, maybe you can give in a little bit here and there. So that support system is huge. I'm glad that you had it, and glad that they were there for you too in 2019. Sounds like you had the right people around you, which is amazing.
Yes. Yeah, that was great. I learned a lot from my own experiences. I try to be as helpful as I can to other people that are going through. Well, I know other people that are going through and have gone through cancer, but I know a lot more people that are struggling with the weight because of this community that I'm involved in. I have a lot of people now reaching out to me for advice or help, and I just try to share links to things that helped me and try to be a positive support for other people, because I know how important that is.
It's incredible just to have, even if it's digital, just to have someone else that's in a position that you want to be in, just to kind of be that external proof of concept. It goes such a long way. One of the things I wanted to ask you, Chris, on this low carb journey, has your diet evolved at all, or has it stayed fairly consistent in terms of the foods that you gravitate towards?
That's a great question. I think there has been some evolving over the last 4 years. Lately it's been relatively consistent. One thing that I don't know if you've seen them, but I've developed a set of rules that I use that I found very helpful. And I've shared them on Twitter quite a bit. They're basically like 5 or 6 rules for myself, and it has to do with how much protein I consume, how much carbs I consume. Basically, for me, very simply, my rules are: I consume 200 grams of protein per day. I consume less than 90 grams of carbs per day, and I try to virtually limit added sugar, seed oils, and grains. It's not entirely. I don't sweat small amounts, especially if I'm like out in a restaurant and I get some seed oils and something. Not a huge catastrophe for me. I can live with small amounts, but I make an effort to keep it down as close to zero as possible. And then the other thing is I don't eat after 9 p.m. or before 12 noon. And then like one little add-on rule that I added on at the end was that I keep high protein satiating foods on hand at all times, so that sort of facilitates me abiding by my rules. Because if I find myself out somewhere, away from home, and I don't have any high protein satiating foods on hand, and all of a sudden some lesser quality foods present themselves, I'm in a little bit of a dilemma. I'm hungry and I'm eating bad foods. So those are very simple rules that can fit on a card the size of it's a business card. And I don't advise other people to adopt my rules, but I do advise them to try to develop a set of rules that work for them. And that's just a good example of one person's rules. And so I forget your original question, actually, but that's something that I've used to keep myself on course. Oh, you asked me how things have evolved. Well, yeah. What led into that then was I find by having a set of rules, it's a lot easier for me to be accountable. And if something isn't working, I can it's basically one of two things. Either you're not following your rules, or there's something wrong with your rules. And so you've got to fix whatever's wrong. And so if you notice that something isn't working, first ask yourself, are you following the rules? And if you can honestly say yes, then start tweaking and making some adjustments. And for me, the 200 grams of protein is something that has evolved over time. I used to consume far less protein, and finally figuring out an amount that worked for me at my activity level and my weightlifting and all that, it turns out that 200 is enough to help keep me satiated and to fuel my protein needs. And I've also experimented with that, the carbohydrate limit, the grains and the seed oils and the sugar has been a relative constant, but I'm always open to adapting those rules. And then I made another set of those rules for my exercise and fitness, and the same basic process. I won't go through the rules right now, but the idea of laying out basically what I'm agreeing to do on a week in, week out basis, and then just, over time, every week, just evaluate, am I getting the results that I want? If yes, just keep with the status quo. If no, ask yourself honestly, are you following the rules? And if you are, maybe something needs to be tweaked, and just keep trying. I found that over time, the tweaks required on my rules become less and less. As I get closer to something that's optimum for me, the tweaks are less often and usually smaller. So if I have to make a little tweak, it's not a big deal. Maybe someone else wouldn't even notice, but I'm like, oh, well, I could, maybe I'm changing the numbers a little bit, or changing, the timing or whatever. But that's really what has worked for me. And I feel like I experiment a lot, and I kind of use the Twitter community to it's easy to find experts, people that know a lot more than me in respect to diet, running, resistance training. And I am no longer afraid to ask experts for their opinion. And I'm not the smartest guy in the world. I will defer to somebody that got a PhD in exercise, or got their MD in nutrition or obesity management. So I ask other people, and I use what I learn to tweak my own approach.
I think the nutritional principle number 5 that you had, I saw Clemenza, I saw your eyes light up too. I think you said it was keeping like readily available protein sources on you at all times. That's so pivotal, because right, you might have control over all your inputs when you're home, but then I think what a lot of people fear is, oh, well, like what if I'm out and for dinner, or I get stuck somewhere and I don't have any good sources of protein? Then they go down like the pizza rabbit hole, or they go off their diet and reverse their progress. You've mitigated that through rule number 5. So do you have like some staple snacks or foods that you actually will keep on you in the car, or like if you're traveling or something like that, just to make sure that you can hit your protein requirements in your diet?
I do, and I actually have I have a weekly email that I've been putting out for now close to 2 years. And shortly after I launched that, I actually got a sponsor, which is Simply Snackin', which makes low carb chicken and beef snacks. And so that's one of the things that I always keep on hand, because they're wrapped and they last. They're high protein beef and chicken. And then I also, it's hard to take like hard-boiled eggs for like long day trips in the car, but things that I have on hand at home in the refrigerator, or if I'm going just out for a part of a day, I'll take some leftover steak or chicken in Ziploc bag. I'll throw that in a little cooler or something like that. And the same type of things that I would be eating at home. Hard-boiled eggs are good. Sometimes nuts, although nuts may sometimes lead me down the wrong path. But things that have protein and will, provide some energy. But yeah, I just always have something on hand that I can eat. And it's really that I'm glad you picked up on that rule, because having something that you can eat, it's my instinct now, whenever I start to get a craving, is to satisfy the craving, to eat the foods that have high protein. And the instinct for people that have been trying to lose weight through calorie restriction is you get a craving and your instinct is to fight the craving.
Mhm.
And it's a completely different attitude. This way of eating that I've been on for the last 4 years is not one of deprivation whatsoever. It's one of feeling satiety. I'm never hungry. Like when I get hungry, that's usually a signal that it's legitimately time for me to eat something, because it's time. And I just don't overeat food, yet I'm never feeling like, the way I used to feel when I was trying to maintain a healthy weight.
Mhm. Yeah, Clemenza touched on that earlier with rewiring your taste buds, but you just touched on another point of almost rewiring your recognition of hunger. And I think that's part of the reason why low carb is so easy to follow, is because you start to naturally understand, okay, when I'm hungry, I eat until I'm full. I mean, you might have I might have a rough template of the calories that I'm eating, but I'm not tracking what I'm eating. And it's just incredible, the results that you get.
Yeah, I really don't have any idea anymore of what.
Mhm.
I think the last time I tracked calories was close to a year ago, about this time last year. I did it for a week. I charted everything I ate for a week. And I noticed even that some days I ate dramatically more calories than others. I was surprised by that. Like, it just doesn't really seem to matter to me, I mean, I guess if somehow I were to eat way more calories every day, somehow I guess I would gain weight. But on this low carb diet, there's just no, I don't count calories. The only thing that I do, if my weight starts to creep up, which doesn't really happen that often, the one thing I do, the one control I have, is dial down the carbs.
Mm.
My zone for carbs is between 50 and 90 grams per day. So if my weight creeps up, I would just dial the carbs down closer to 50.
Mm.
It wouldn't even be, it's not even a big deal. I mean, it's like, you still eat as much of anything else as I want. And, I'll get on the scale the next day. And if the weight is still a pound or two higher than I want it to be. And the good news is there's not even any urgency there. Like if my weight is 207 and I like to keep it between 200 and 205, what's the rush? I'd rather not weigh 207, but it's completely within my control. And if I just dial those carbs down closer to 50 for 2-3 days, the weight will just go back down to 204, 203. And so there's never a sense of urgency or crisis or, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to get bigger pants, or my diet's falling apart. It's just something that is completely within my control and has been for the last almost, more than 4 years.
It's amazing. Have you had any luck converting any of your friends to this approach, or at least getting them on your rules? Because I think your rules really speaks to me. I am like I'm basically a caveman in the way that I think. I want everything to be 5 simple steps and just simplified rules. And so I just think that's the core of solving problems, starts at making everything as the lowest bar possible for everyone to find a way to put a win on the scoreboard. And doing that can be as simple as coming up with some rules that are very achievable and just following that and changing them over time. But I'm curious if you've helped any of your friends or family or random strangers convert, and what success you've had.
Yeah, well, I've learned the hard way that, converting someone is very difficult. And, but I've because of my email, and I've got about 1,000 subscribers on my email, and I get a lot of reader response and questions, but I also get a lot of good feedback. People have told me, not only have they told me that my rules have led them to create their own, but they've shared with me their rules. And I'm very interested to see what other people do. I think you made a good point about rules and sort of simplifying. I deliberately made my rules as simple as possible. You could write 10 pages, but there's really only a few key points that sort of are the guardrails that keep me on track. I don't make a rule about how much fat I consume, because to me it's irrelevant and it's not a problem for me. Carbs, on the other hand, if I eat too many carbs, I gain weight. I've tried it and it happens every time. But yes, I've had people send me their rules that they've created after seeing mine. I've had people email me their success stories. Actually, both of my sisters have had positive results, at least partly influenced by some of the things that I've been doing. And they've given me great feedback, and they've learned things themselves. So it's more of a collaboration, actually. Like we bounce ideas off of each other. And one of my sisters sends me her low carb food creations, her finished meals and things, and I get a kick out of that, because it's sort of something that we have in common now, and we're enjoying some success on it. So it's a lot of fun. But yeah, I get a lot of feedback from people that have say they've learned things from me, and then they share what they're doing and their progress, and it's a lot of fun. And I really like that. Like on Twitter, I guess people can use different platforms to get these goals. Some people do Instagram or whatever, but Twitter for me has been a great place for me to bounce ideas off of each other. I've actually met people. Having gone to low carb conferences, I've met a lot of people that I've interacted with on Twitter, but I've also now met numerous people in real life that I've previously only knew through Twitter, just because of this journey I've been on. And so I've learned from them, and I believe a lot of them have learned from me.
Yeah, we share something pretty similar with that, with meeting people offline and just being able to share the experiences with people. I know Salazzo and I are lucky and fortunate enough to have had mutual interest and passions in the health and wellness space, and really sort of been on parallel paths, and we know each other in person. So it's been really fun being able to support each other through this process. But meeting people online has been really cool, and a new experience for us, where there's so many amazing people out there who are trying this, or just at a different phase in their journey. They're either at the same point, further along, just getting started. But I think that it's amazing being able to pull and sort of cast out your story out there, and being able to just connect with all sorts of people who are engaged or interested in what's going on. So that's, I think it's amazing what you've been able to do. 1,000 people on a newsletter is incredible. I mean, that's powerful.
It's been a real learning experience for me, and I'm not done learning. The more I learn, the more hungry I get to improve other aspects of my life, and try to, help other people along the way, because there's people that are exactly where I was 4 years ago who are now reaching out to me, but there were other people that helped me along the way. So it's it's a give and take, and it's a real, it's really satisfying to be able to sort of use what I've learned to help other people. And I'm going to continue doing it.
Chris, one of the things you mentioned, I think a few questions ago, you were talking about your weight being around 205, 207. You seem like you're very dialed in and very in tune with your body and understanding what you're weighing. And if you put on a little bit of weight, knowing how to dial back your carbs. For someone that's listening, that's maybe interested in losing weight, Do you think that the scale is an important part of that process? Because I feel like you hear conflicting things where there's some people that are saying, like, just use the mirror test, just go with how you look in the mirror. There's some people that say, hey, weigh yourself at the same time every single day. Do you feel a particular way about that, or have an approach that works with you, or something that you'd recommend?
Well, sometimes more information, several points of information can be helpful. I have used the scale as a sort of barometer for my progress, but especially considering that I very much value the importance of muscle in the body, and muscle weighs a lot. I think people make a huge mistake when they are willing to put all of their stock in the BMI. There's, somebody with somebody with a lot of muscle on their body is going to be fooled by the BMI. And it gives you a disincentive to gain muscle. And something that's bothered me for a long time. I think you can combine the scale with either a tape measure or how your clothes fit. I mean, for me, a tape measure isn't really that necessary. If I put on a pair of, say, 34 Levi's, and I know how they fit, I can tell if I'm gaining weight in the right places or the wrong places. Although I got to admit that since I really kind of took up my work on the deadlifts and the squats, got to be careful with that. That makes me gain some size in my legs and my butt. That's not bad weight, but I think you should, I think you should use either a tape measure or, consistently judge yourself on a certain type of clothing. That'll give you a good idea as to how your progress is going, and you can use the scale. Certainly, when I was 278 pounds, there was no delusion there. I was very much overweight, and you could see it in the mirror. But yeah, I think combining a few different points of data, it can be helpful. And I definitely do not. The BMI, I think is causes a lot of problems for some people. So definitely, if you're paying the right attention to muscle, which I heavily endorse for people for their, muscle is very helpful in this whole weight loss journey too, because from everything I've heard, and it kind of my own personal experience supports this, putting on some muscle on your body helps in the whole process of your metabolism, and it requires you use calories to sustain that muscle, and I think it just improves your overall health. So don't put all your stock in the scale. It's a helpful tool.
Chris, I've got one last question for you, and it's hopefully just a simple one, but you had this transformation for yourself later in life. And I think that stage of life is very important. And Sollozzo and I sort of benefit from not having kids, still being in our 20s. Our lifestyles don't have all the stresses that other people's necessarily have. If you could go back to a certain point in your life and tell yourself, one thing to anchor yourself to really have never been in that situation, never get to the place that you got to where you needed to make the big change later in life, where would you go back to, and what would you say to yourself, when you're, 20, 25, just getting started? Or would it be, when you were just getting started with the keto stuff, and going back and giving yourself a little bit of advice there? I'm curious.
Well, I wish that I had known about, I didn't even go into some of the different diets that I've tried over the years. I just wish that I had found, I call it I don't know. I have a high protein, low carb way of eating. That's basically the way I would describe it. And I don't eat garbage processed foods. I already told you the foods I exclude: the grains, the seed oils, and the sugar for the most part. I wish I had just discovered that when I was in my 20s or earlier, because, I have a better body composition now than when I was in college. And when I was in college, I was working out, and I was running and exercising, and it wasn't, I wasn't, significantly overweight in college, although shortly thereafter, a couple of years after college, I put on a lot of weight. But yeah, I just wish that I had discovered that way of eating when I was in my 20s, because it would have just saved me a lot of aggravation. People feel like a failure when you continually try to do something that seems like it should be so easy to lose weight and to maintain a healthy body weight. It seems like it should be easy, and you fail, and you fail again, and you fail again. And I tried, I didn't eat red meat for 10 years at one point in my life. And I got myself in, I ended up with a vitamin B12 deficiency, and it wasn't a good place to be. I did a lot of things that were counterproductive without realizing why or how. So I just really wish I had gotten the information sooner. But on the positive side for me, I am pretty healthy right now. And so basically I suffered only, carrying around too much weight for too many years. But, there's a lot of people that have suffered a lot worse: diabetes, dialysis, and worse. So it's like, I consider myself lucky to be where I am right now.
It's amazing. Yeah, I think that I can speak for both Clemenza and I that, we definitely look up to you, and it's really motivating to see someone that's continuing to get better as they age, to just show, hey, look, you can be in your 50s and continue to put on muscle. And you're at a point now where you just confidently said that you're in the best shape of your life. You're in better shape now in your 50s than you were in your 20s. So, it's motivating to us, and I think it's going to be motivating for a lot of other people. But just can't thank you enough for coming on to the podcast and having this conversation. I know we could probably geek out with you for hours about all this low carb stuff and get very granular with the level of detail, but we'll spare you with that. But would love to have you back on anytime soon, and just really appreciate you coming on and having the great chat.
Well, I really appreciate what both of you guys are doing. And, you guys are putting out some great threads and tweets on Twitter, and now this podcast. I just started listening to your podcast very recently. I only became aware of it very recently, and you're doing some great things, and I look forward to what you continue to do. You're really setting a great example, I should say, and I've enjoyed what you've done so far. Look forward to more.
Appreciate it, Chris, and welcome to the Meat Mafia also.
Thank you very much.